Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. So hello and good evening to all of you watching in Facebook land or on YouTube land. I'd like to see you interact with us on the chat. So let's get right to it. We have the full cast of characters tonight, and we'll start with Robert Johnson, in no particular order, for his introduction.
Robert Johnson, Space Novum Lodge, 1183, current sitting secretary, past master Waukegan 78, a bunch of other stuff, host of Whence Came You Masonic podcast. Thanks, John.
Good evening, Jason Richards. Hello and hi. How are you?
I'm good. I was writing something very witty in the chat to Scott Sherman on YouTube. So it took me a while to find my
interacting real time. Good.
I know.
Who are you?
Awesome. I am Jason Richards. I'm a past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Awesome sauce. Next up, Mike the intern. Hello and good evening.
Good evening. Mike Hambrecht here. Lakeshore Lodge number 307 in Madison, Ohio. And I am the current senior warden and lodge education officer. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. And last but not least, the one, the only, Juan Sepulveda. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good to see you all. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the brother behind thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com. Good evening.
Good evening. Let me know if that gets old, Juan. I really love that introduction. So, before we get into tonight's topic, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons who've been supporting the show. It's really helped upgrade some software, some hardware, and really carry us into 2021. So you guys are awesome, and I want to thank you very much. If you want to join us for some behind-the-scenes perks, head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, and we'd love to chat with you in our little private group. So see you over there. Now, today's topic is one that we thought was apropos because if you're watching this live, or even if you're not watching it live, it's already after the inauguration of number 46, President Joseph Biden. So we have a new administration. We've had an interesting 4 years, and now we're ready to go off into another journey of 4 years. And we thought now would be a great time to go back and reflect and look at the Masonic past of the U.S. presidents, of which we immediately went to one of our resident historians, Mike the intern, who graciously pulled together a multi-week research process in order to assemble a really great presentation on the Masonic presidents. So, I guess what we'll do, in the interest of time, we'll take it away to Mike, and then we'll maybe chime in later. So the floor is yours, Brother Hambrecht.
Okay. So I'm going to start sharing my presentation here. So tonight we're going to introduce you to 14 brothers who have served as President of the United States, some of whom you have probably already been introduced to as Brother Masons. Many of these brothers have served the office with distinction, others not so. And sadly, others have simply died in office or been assassinated. Where possible, I will tell you about their Masonic careers, as well as a little about their time in office. However, while leading into this presentation, I want to recognize three brothers for their contributions to this presentation. Travis Simpkins for his sketches of 5 of these brothers. Todd Creason for his books, Famous American Freemasons, Volume 1 and 2, and Steve Harrison for his book, Tales from the Craft, and also his Masonic Minutes, which are included in RJ's Whence Came You podcast. I've done plenty of my own research, but these 3 books helped me liven things up a bit. Oh, and don't let me forget the Grand Lodge of Ohio's blog posts, Ohio Masonry in the U.S. Presidency, and Most Worshipful Brother Harry S. Truman. So now let me introduce you to our brother presidents. And we'll start obviously with our first one, George Washington. And I'm sure that many of you are not only aware that Brother Washington was our first president, but that he was also a Freemason. And I'm equally aware that he has been covered to the point where we can say to each other with humorous intent, by the way, did you know that George Washington was a Freemason? So I will just leave this one there and say that yes, he was a Freemason and our first president. He was initiated on November 4th, 1752 in Fredericksburg Lodge number 4 in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and elected worshipful master on December 20th, 1788. James Monroe, who was our 5th president and the last president of what is commonly called the Virginia dynasty. He is perhaps the best known for issuing the Monroe Doctrine, which was a policy opposing European colonialism in the Americas. Along with George Washington of Alexandria Lodge 22, James Monroe of Williamsburg Lodge number 6, both of them from Virginia, were the only 2 United States presidents elected essentially without opposition. In 1820, all members of the Electoral College were obligated to cast a vote for Monroe. But New Hampshire Representative William Plumer instead voted for John Quincy Adams. A popular story is that Plumer cast the renegade vote against Monroe because he felt no president except Washington should garner a unanimous vote in the Electoral College. While this is a nice sentiment, it's probably not true. Plumer was not a supporter of Monroe. Monroe was initiated on November 9th, 1775 in Williamsburg Lodge number 6 in Williamsburg, Virginia, at the age of 17 while he studied at the College of William and Mary. Our next president is Andrew Jackson. He was an American soldier and statesman who served as the 7th president of the United States from 1829 to 1837. But before being elected to the presidency, Jackson gained fame as a general in the United States Army, and he served in both houses of the U.S. Congress. As an expansionist president, Jackson sought to advance the rights of the common man against a corrupt aristocracy and to preserve the Union. Prior to becoming political allies, Missouri's cantankerous and imposing first senator Thomas Hart Benton and Andrew Jackson were bitter foes. Believing Jackson had insulted his brother Jesse, Benton hunted Jackson down. A fight erupted in gunplay, in which Benton shot and nearly killed Jackson. After the death of Andrew Jackson, a young colleague, not from the shot, by the way, a young colleague approached Senator Benton. The novice politician asked Benton if he had known Jackson. Benton replied in his familiar, pompous manner, "Yes, sir, I knew him. Sir, General Jackson was a very great man, sir. I shot him, sir." Jackson was a member of St. Tammany, later Harmony Lodge, number 1, Nashville, Tennessee. He was elected the Grand Master of Tennessee on October 7th, 1822, and served until October 4th, 1824. James K. Polk, the 11th President of the United States, serving from 1845 to 1849, was previously the Speaker of the House of Representatives and Governor of Tennessee. He was a protege of Andrew Jackson. He was a member of the Democratic Party and an advocate of Jacksonian democracy. Polk is chiefly known for extending the territory of the United States through the Mexican-American War. So during his presidency, the United States expanded significantly with the annexation of the Republic of Texas, the Oregon Territory, and the Mexican Cession. Following the American victory in the Mexican-American War, Brother James K. Polk, 11th President of the United States, Columbia Lodge 31, Columbia, Tennessee, left office on March 4th, 1849, and died June 15th, 1849, just 103 days later He had the shortest retirement of any president, and at 53, he was also the youngest president to die in retirement. He was initiated on June 5th, 1820, in Columbia Lodge number 31 in Columbia, Tennessee. James Buchanan, an American lawyer and politician who served as the 15th President of the United States. He previously served as Secretary of State and represented Pennsylvania in both houses of the U.S. Congress. He was a states' rights advocate and minimized the role of the federal government in the nation's final years of slavery. Modern historians and critics condemn Buchanan for not addressing the issue of slavery or forestalling the secession of the southern states over it. Historians and scholars consistently rank him as one of the country's worst presidents. He was initiated on December 11, 1816, in Lodge number 43 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and appointed the District Deputy Grand Master for the counties of Lancaster, Lebanon, and York in 1824. Andrew Johnson, the 17th President of the United States, serving from 1865 to 1869. He assumed the presidency as he was the vice president at the time of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Johnson was a Democrat who ran with Lincoln on the National Union ticket, coming to the office as the Civil War concluded. He favored quick restoration of the seceded states to the Union without protection for the former slaves. This led him to conflict with the Republican-dominated Congress, culminating in his impeachment by the House of Representatives in 1868. He was acquitted in the Senate by just one vote. His main accomplishment as president was the Alaska Purchase, also known as Seward's Folly. It is a well-known fact that Brother Andrew Johnson, Greenville Lodge 119 of Greenville, Tennessee, is one of only 3 presidents to be impeached. A lesser known is the fact that Johnson's main antagonist in the impeachment was a fervent anti-Mason, Thaddeus Stevens. Johnson's dedication to the craft played a significant role in prompting Stevens to take action against him. He was initiated on May 5th, 1851 in Greenville Lodge number 119 in Greenville, Tennessee. James A. Garfield is the 20th President of the United States, serving from March 4th, 1881 until his death by assassination 6.5 months later. He is the only sitting member of the United States House of Representatives to be elected to the presidency. James A. Garfield had many Masonic affiliations. In 1864, Garfield was made a Master Mason at Columbus Lodge number 30 in Columbus, Ohio, and he lived nearby in Cuyahoga County. Well, that's not really that nearby. He attended Williams College, taught classics at Hiram College, and became a brigadier general during the Civil War, and then was elected by Ohioans to Congress in 1862. During the time he was in Washington as a congressman, Garfield became affiliated with Pentalpha Lodge number 23 as a charter member in 1869. He was initiated on November 19, 1861 in Magnolia Lodge number 20, Columbus, Ohio, and raised on November 22, 1864 in Columbus Lodge number 30. He later joined Garrettsville Lodge number 246 in Garrettsville, Ohio, in 1866 and was its chaplain for the years 1868 to 69. William McKinley was the 25th President of the United States from 1897 until his assassination in 1901. During his presidency, McKinley led the nation to victory in the Spanish-American War, raised protective tariffs to promote American industry, and kept the nation on the gold standard in a rejection of the expansionary monetary policy of free silver. McKinley was the last president to have served in the American Civil War and he was the only one to have started the war as an enlisted soldier, beginning as a private in the Union Army and ending as a brevet major. Brother William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, loved carnations and considered them good luck. On September 6, 1901, McKinley gave his good luck charm, a red carnation that he was wearing, to a little girl in the receiving line at the Pan American Exposition. Seconds later, an assassin struck, shooting him and wounding him fatally. William McKinley was inaugurated with a Masonic backstory spawned from the period he served in the Union Army. During the Civil War, it was during that time that he noticed a doctor handing out money to some Confederate prisoners taken following the Battle of Winchester. In his curiosity, McKinley asked the doctor why he was distributing money to the enemy troops, and was told that it was a loan to fellow Masons who would one day pay it back if and when they could. It was at that point that McKinley decided to become a Freemason, and he was initiated on May 1st, 1865 in Hiram Lodge number 21 in Winchester, Virginia. He joined the Canton Lodge number 60 in Canton, Ohio in 1867 and is a charter member of Eagle, later William McKinley Lodge number 431, also in Canton. Theodore Roosevelt, often referred to as Teddy Roosevelt, or his initials TR, was an American statesman, conservationist, naturalist, historian, and writer who served as the 26th President of the United States, taking over after the assassination of Brother McKinley from 1901 to 1909. He previously served as the 33rd Governor of New York from 1899 to 1900 and as the 25th Vice President of the United States from March to September 1901. Roosevelt emerged as a leader of the Republican Party and became a driving force for the antitrust policy while supporting progressive-era policies in the early 20th century. His face is depicted on Mount Rushmore alongside fellow presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. The body of Brother John Paul Jones, father of the American Navy, was lost for 113 years. Brother Jones died a lonely and forgotten man in Paris in 1792. A friend paid for a lead coffin, and Jones was buried in the Protestant cemetery. Appointed ambassador to France in 1899, General Horace Porter became obsessed with finding Brother Jones' remains. He found them well preserved thanks to the lead coffin, and after a six-year search, the U.S. government transported the American hero's remains where President and Masonic brother Theodore Roosevelt presided over a grand funeral. Eventually, Jones' remains were placed in an elaborate sarcophagus at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis. Theodore Roosevelt was initiated on January 2nd, 1901, in Matencock Lodge, number 806 in Oyster Bay, New York. William H. Taft was the 27th President of the United States and the 10th Chief Justice of the United States, the only person to have held both offices. Taft was elected president in 1908, the chosen successor of Theodore Roosevelt, but was defeated for re-election by Woodrow Wilson in 1912 after Roosevelt split the Republican Party vote by running as a third-party candidate. In 1921, President Warren G. Harding appointed Taft to be the Chief Justice, a position in which he served until a month before his death. His induction into Freemasonry was anything but traditional. In February 1909, Taft was made a Mason at sight, a process in which a non-Mason is initiated into Freemasonry and raised to the degree of Master Mason by the power of the Grand Master. Taft's appointment was made within the body of Kilwinning Lodge, number 356, Cincinnati, Ohio, by the Grand Master Charles S. Hoskinson, in an emergent lodge called together for the purpose. His father and two brothers were also members of this lodge. Brother and President Taft addressed the brethren saying, "I am glad to be here and to be a Mason. It does me good to feel the thrill that comes from recognize on all hands the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man." Warren G. Harding was the 29th President of the United States from 1921 until his death in 1923. A member of the Republican Party, he was one of the most popular U.S. presidents to that point. After his death, a number of scandals, including Teapot Dome, came to light, as did his extramarital affair with Nan Britton. Each eroded his popular regard. He was an Ohio Republican who served in the Ohio Senate and then later on in the United States Senate. On June 28, 1901, Harding was initiated into Mason's Marion Lodge No. 70 in Marion, Ohio. Because of some personal issues within the lodge, Brother Harding's advancement was hindered until 1920. It was around that time Harding had been nominated for president. Friends persuaded the opposition to withdraw the objection, and on August 27, 1920, 19 years after his initiation, Brother Harding achieved the sublime degree of Master Mason in Marion Lodge. At his request, Brother Harding took the oath of office of President of the United States upon the same Bible as was used by Brother George Washington for that same purpose on April 30th, 1789. The Altar Bible of St. John's Lodge No. 1, New York City. In 1921, President Warren G. Harding honored Marie Curie for her achievements in the world of science. Madame Curie, the first person honored with 2 Nobel Prizes in chemistry and physics, was a pioneer researcher on radioactivity. To commemorate her work in the field, Brother Harding presented her with a gram of highly radioactive radium. Franklin D. Roosevelt, often referred to by his initials FDR, was an American politician who served as 32nd President of the United States from 1933 until his death in 1945. He was a member of the Democratic Party. He won a record 4 presidential elections and became a central figure in world events during the first half of the 20th century. Roosevelt directed the federal government during most of the Great Depression, implementing his New Deal domestic agenda in response to the worst economic crisis in the U.S. history. As a dominant leader of his party, he built the New Deal coalition, which defined modern liberalism in the United States throughout the middle third of the 20th century. His third and fourth terms were dominated by World War II, which ended shortly after he had died in office. Brother Franklin D. Roosevelt of Holland Lodge No. 8 of New York City crossed the Atlantic in November 1943 to attend a World War II summit. While the president was en route traveling on the USS Iowa battleship, the Navy arranged a demonstration of firepower for its commander-in-chief. At the start of the trip, the destroyer William D. Porter joined the Iowa to show off its capabilities for FDR. During the demonstration, crew members inadvertently fired a live torpedo at the president's ship. Learning this, Brother Roosevelt asked to be taken deckside so he could watch. Forced to take evasive action, the Iowa barely avoided the live fish. Roosevelt, a Democrat, took the incident in stride, but from that point on, whenever the Willie D pulled into port, crew members from other ships would yell in ridicule, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans!" He was initiated on October 11th, 1911, in Holland Lodge No. 8, New York City, and made honorary Grand Master of the Order of D. Malay on April 13th, 1943. Harry S. Truman serving as the 33rd President of the United States from 1945 to 1953. Most Worshipful Brother Harry Truman is well known for launching the Marshall Plan, leading the Cold War through the Truman Doctrine and NATO, and for intervening in the Korean War. He also lived his life dedicated to the craft, ultimately becoming the second president to also serve as Grand Master. Most Worshipful Brother Truman is known as one of the most dedicated men to have joined Masonry. He was a member of a large number of orders, even while serving as senator, vice president, and president. On February 9, 1909, he received his first degree after petitioning Belton Lodge number 450 in Belton, Missouri. While his father was not a member of his grandfathers were, he also had various cousins, siblings, and nephews that were. Most Worshipful Brother Truman was elected as junior warden of his lodge in 1910 and became a key figure in organizing the lodge in Grandview, Missouri, becoming its first recorded master when it was formally chartered. In 1912, he entered the Scottish Rite Lodge of Perfection and Chapter Rose Croix in Kansas City. He completed the Scottish Rite degrees in 1917 before leaving. One second.
You're right there, Mike?
Yep, I am. Before leaving for the war, Scottish Rite degrees in 1917, before leaving for the war, through the York Rite, he received the chapter council degrees in Kansas City in 1919, and in 1923 was honored as a Knight Companion of the Red Cross of Constantine. From 1925 to 1930, he served as the District Deputy Grand Master and lecturer for the newly formed 59th Masonic District. He then proceeded to enter the Missouri Grand Lodge line, ultimately serving as Grand Master from 1940 to 1941. While his primary interest was the Blue Lodge, he also was honored in the Scottish Rite by being coroneted as 33rd degree honorary in October of 1945. For both his service to Freemasonry and the United States, he also received the Gorgeous Medal by the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite on May 8, 1959. Most Worshipful Brother Truman was presented with a 50 Years Award. He was the only U.S. president to reach that golden anniversary in Freemasonry. On December 26, 1972, Harry S. Truman passed away in Kansas City, Missouri, due to complications from pneumonia at the age of 88. He is remembered for striving to live his life committed to our tenets of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Gerald Ford was an American politician who served as the 38th President of the United States from August 1974 to January 1977. Ford previously served as the 40th Vice President of the United States from December 1973 to August 1974. Ford is the only person to have served as both Vice President and President without being elected to either office by the Electoral College. A giant chicken outfit-clad stalker hounded President Gerald Ford in his 1976 presidential campaign. The huge Polo Loco followed by Ford from campaign stop to campaign stop, at times sharing the stage with him, interviewing him, and even embracing him. Rather than becoming annoyed, Brother Ford played along with the prank and brought some levity to an otherwise dreary campaign. Today, that same chicken who made his national debut campaigning with Gerald Ford has gone on to fame in his own right. He is now known as the San Diego Chicken. Gerald Ford was initiated on September 30th, 1949 in Malta Lodge number 465, Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was passed on April 20th, 1951 and raised on May 18th, 1951 in Columbia Lodge number 3, Washington, D.C. He received the 33rd degree on September 26, 1962 and was made Honorary Grand Master of the Order of D. Malay in April 1975. Now we're on to some other brothers who have also been the president in the United States or of the United States. Questionable here. Yeah. So here we have a few interesting brothers to add to this list. Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th President of the United States, was initiated into the first degrees of Freemasonry. He was an entered apprentice October 30th, 1937 in Johnson City Lodge, number 561 in Johnson City, Texas. But he did not advance any further and did not become a full member of his lodge. Now this is another one. US President for only a day. Because Inauguration Day fell on Sunday, President-elect Zachary Taylor and Vice President-elect Millard Fillmore both refused to take their oaths of office, leaving the presidency vacant. Constitutionally, succession fell to the President of the Senate, Brother David Rice Atchison, a member of Missouri's Platte Lodge 56, and with the help of Judge Willie Magnum administering the oath of office, and for a single day, Sunday, March 4th, 1849, Brother David Rice Atchison was, by some accounts, the President of the United States. This one's the most interesting, though. Samuel Huntington was a jurist, statesman, and patriot in the American Revolution from Connecticut. As a delegate to the Continental Congress, he signed the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. He also served as president of the Continental Congress from 1779 to 1781. Then he was president of the United States in Congress assembled in 1781 and Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court from 1784 to 1785, and the 18th Governor of Connecticut from 1786 until his death. His serving as the President of the United States in Congress is what makes him the first president in the United States. Now, it's possible that the Freemason connection here is being confused with his nephew, Samuel H. Huntington, who was an active Ohio Freemason. I know that I've heard it both ways, so I don't know 100%. Now, on to some presidents who weren't brothers, and they surprise us, though, that they weren't. There's two of them, Jefferson and Lincoln. Each have interesting Masonic connections. There are many who believe that Thomas Jefferson was a Freemason. However, contemporary evidence to support that has never been found. However, Abraham Lincoln petitioned Tyrion Lodge in Springfield, Illinois, shortly before he decided to run for president. He withdrew that petition, afraid that Freemasons would misinterpret his motive for joining the lodge as an attempt to pander for their support in the election. He promised to resubmit his petition to receive the degrees of Masonry when his presidency was over. It was a promise he had never had the opportunity to fulfill. So, who among you will be the next brother president? Will it be you? And that concludes my presentation.
Will it be you, Jason?
No.
Oh, right. I was
going to say it won't be any of us.
I was getting my hopes up.
Given how much of a digital footprint we have on the internet now.
You know,
Especially as deepfakes become more and more commonplace. Like someone will just run an AI on all of TMR.
Nobody wants to deepfake you, Jason.
We found this video of John Ruark reciting Mein Kampf from memory. Like, no, that's all political ambitions are lost.
So,
isn't that strange though? I mean, think about that. You know, so Mike, when you say, "Will it be you?" Is there a brother out there today who's watching or consuming this, likely on maybe a podcast, and not on the video, and not leaving a digital footprint somewhere that has a chance at being president? I wrote a blog post years ago about the next Masonic president. Could a Masonic president, or could the president today be a Freemason? And my answer was, like, given the shady ability that people have to, I mean, politics gets slimy, like, no matter what. The best politicians have things that we just look at and shake a head at. And most of those things, like, you just can't do those things technically if you're a Mason. It's such a wild thing to conceive of. There was some chat, though. We had some brothers asking if we know if there are any brothers currently, how many brothers are in politics? To which I said, well, we know of a bunch, but we can't really say.
Yeah, we don't want to start outing them.
Yep.
Unless they want to out themselves. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's no different than, go ahead, Juan. I saw you were getting ready to say something.
No, that it's a very important point. Mm-hmm. There are brothers out there, and if they haven't made an effort to present themselves as Masons, it would be egregious for any of us to point them out. This is something that I think, if you think about American Masonry, doesn't have the discretion that Masonry has in other countries. But I think that right there would be a line crossed if we were to oust something. We know of people in different industries that are in the public eye who are Masons, but for one reason or another, perhaps to avoid any kind of conspiracies or any kind of what do you call that? Represalia. I don't know how to say that. It's like whenever you act against someone. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we should respect that discretion.
Right.
And Hami is pollo loco, puñeta.
Okay.
Hey, so Hami, great job on the presentation. I think this is a wonderful effort.
Thank you.
Kudos. Golf claps all around. You did a really good job just kind of covering, you could have gone deep in any one of those. I know that's the hard part, right? Is keeping with those 14 presidents, kind of highlighting them and making sure that their Masonic affiliations are known without like turning that into a 4-hour presentation. I think probably you did the best job I think anyone could ever do with that. So that's good. And I know that we had a couple people asking for a copy of the slides, and so maybe we'll offer that up as a perk for our patrons. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to throw out there: Ohio has four of those presidents.
Virginia had a few too. I'm just saying,
Ohio 2 of whom were assassinated.
Details.
But 4 of those presidents were Ohioans, and that's the most on that list. Just saying.
So again, thanks for that. I know that a couple of us have also kind of taken the opportunity to nerd out a bit on a few of those. So anyone else want to jump in with some other research or anything else that maybe research they found about presidents who have not gone all the way to become Master Mason, or anything else that you found?
Not about that, but I was always intrigued by this story that I heard about Brother Taft, that he got stuck in a bathtub in the White House.
Correct.
Is that true, Mike? Do you know?
I'm not. I don't know, but that one would not surprise me at all. I mean,
he was 6 foot.
Taft struggled with his weight throughout most of his adult life.
yes.
And I believe that the anecdote of him getting stuck in a White House bathtub has been corroborated.
Right. That is,
Wow.
That's correct.
Just like nothing against him. That's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was 6 foot and
that he's
over
normal.
350 pounds. Yeah.
Wow.
He's a big
But then he
guy.
was just a normal, big, a big man with struggling with obesity, just like many of us,
Yeah.
in
I
the
saw-
U.S. today.
I also was reading about James Buchanan because he is like rated amongst, has the most checks against him with these scholarly articles, him being the worst president as a do-nothing. I was reading that some really interesting things when compared with, I would suppose, like Masonic ideals, that late night poker parties and all this stuff while in the White House really did nothing, and actually there have been like these like really concerning articles and opinions that he like contributed to essentially what became the Civil War, having done nothing when states secede from the and I don't mean this in a derogatory way toward my own political affiliation with libertarianism, but like he was so states' rights oriented to a fault. I mean, it was crazy. And
When you're the chief federalist, you kind of need to have a little bit of compromise there, right?
Yeah, and so
Really?
I kept thinking about this, and I struggled with thinking about, a Masonic obligation of which maybe sounded something like what we take today, but I don't know. How do you reconcile that kind of stuff? And it must be so hard for brothers in politics today to reconcile, these oaths that we take, knowing that almost every move in politics today has to be a calculated decision, because there's always going to be a side that doesn't get what they need or equity or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
with
just
him,
wild.
with Buchanan, and with Buchanan, the one thing you got to consider, it wouldn't matter which way he stepped. He was going to step in a hornet's nest. Didn't matter. I mean, if he said, I'm going to help, I want these states to stay, we're going to make them stay. It was going to light a hornet's nest. If he stepped the other way and said, well, let's just let them go, we'll figure that out later. He was stepping on another hornet's nest. And same thing, if he'd done anything, not that I'm saying he should or shouldn't have, but if he'd done anything about slavery, it would have been another thing, just another nest for him to step in, and it would never have gone very well for him no matter what. I mean, he really was he was in a rock and a hard place situation there, no matter which side he went with.
So no, I have a fun one for you. Looking at my research, because I think there's some other things like you said Lincoln may or may not have got his EA degree, or we know that after Kennedy, LBJ
Johnson.
yeah,
Yep.
I believe he was an EA but never proceeded, right? But one thing that I found fascinating, I didn't really know this until I was really researching for the show, that it's always assumed, right, that in order to be a Scottish Rite Mason, you have to be a Master Mason from a regular Blue Lodge first. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Also, in order to be in the shrine, to be a Shriner, wear the little fez and all that, you also must be a Mason first. Except when it's not true. And so what happened was in February of 1988, February 11th, 1988, in fact, It was a joint effort by the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction Grand Commander, the Southern Masonic Jurisdiction Grand Commander, and the Imperial Potentate for the shrine. All got together, headed over to the White House, and started handing out certificates of honorary membership to then President Ronald Reagan. So this is fascinating when I started digging this up, because it obviously Ronald Reagan was not a Mason at the time. So you're now immediately stepping on a lot of toes, and so it's a fascinating story where. For all the right reasons, maybe malicious or not, don't know, but we did have absolute evidence where, absolute evidence. Here's the actual certificate where the northern and southern jurisdictions gave a certificate to Ronald Reagan as an honorary Scottish Rite Mason, in writing, signed, dated, print, stamped. It's all there, and the same for the shrine as well. So you have a Mason, a president who was not a Mason but received honorary titles? Question mark. I don't know what you call that. As history goes, it did create a little bit of a faux pas with the Grand Lodge of D.C. I don't know why, but. So I guess you could kind of call Reagan an honorary Scottish Rite Mason with an asterisk, because although he didn't receive the 3 degrees of Masonry, it was not a Masonette site type of effort, which does happen in some jurisdictions, and only the Grand Master in that jurisdiction has the power to do that. But even later on, in the New Age magazine in April 1988, the president thanked the Scottish Rite Masons for the framed certificate of membership, as he called it, and was honored to join the ranks of 16 former presidents in their association with Freemasonry. So as far as Reagan, he didn't know the nuance. He's like, great, you guys are Masons? You gave me an honorary title? Yay, I'm a Mason. So that was fascinating to hear. This has been talked about. I found this information out of the Northern Light magazine, out of the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction, and it's just a fascinating story of potentially some people overstepping their bounds, but either way, the what's done is done, and I'm gonna go ahead and call it. I'm gonna say Reagan was a half Mason, an asterisk Mason, however you want to categorize that. So any other fun facts that you guys have found as you were preparing for the show?
I wanted to bring up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
RJ.
Mike.
No, go ahead, RJ. No, you go ahead.
So I wanted to bring this up, and this is kind of a sore topic. I don't know enough about the man in his presidential capacity, other than how history is written by the winners. And because of that, only positive information is largely given regarding a lot of these people. Oliver Stone put a documentary out a few years ago on Netflix, and he has one of the episodes is about Harry Truman. And in this particular episode, it's called The Untold History of the United States. And in one of them, they really paint Truman in a bad light. And I know Missouri Masons who I've talked to about this, went ballistic. Not literally, they weren't writing letters or whatever, but they just thought it was, the absolute worst. Because they painted Truman as, they called him a mama's boy, and somebody who dropped the bomb because he was a man of small stature, and all this wild stuff. And I couldn't believe, I had always grown up, quote unquote Masonically, putting Truman, really high on the list of like men to look up to in terms of the fraternity and what he stood for, and he was a president and a success and a grand master and all of these things. So I just, my question is, have any of you watched any of that documentary? Okay. Yeah, I mean, check it out. Let me know. It's weird and wild and upsetting at times.
I have not watched that documentary, but I am aware of, that there is feelings that Truman was not a strong president. But I mean, there's also contradictions to that. I mean, if you really think about it, the man fired Douglas MacArthur. Smart move, but he did fire him. I mean, the man was the general of the army at that time, having to do with the Korean War. And he spoke out against what the president was telling him to do, which was what he was telling him not to do. And that was not to bomb or invade China. And MacArthur went on record as saying that was wrong and stupid and we better do this. So he got fired, And I mean, in that decision to drop the bomb, whether it's because he's small stature, I doubt that. I would go more with the fact that he got information that he was told, which was that we have this bomb. And I mean, honestly, most men didn't know what that bomb could do. I'll give you that. The scientists did, and they were trying to petition against it. But the fact is, most of the men involved in that project didn't know it wasn't any more than just a bomb. They didn't know that how bad radiation would be. And they convinced him that it was going to be the right thing to do. And based on projected war deaths for the battles that it would take to take over Japan, it was a smart decision, is all I'll say, because it would have more than tripled in the deaths of everyone on that, just to do that. So, but it's easy to look back on history and go, yeah, you were wrong.
Oh, we do that all day.
Yeah, of course. Why not? Armchair historians. Go ahead, Juan. You ready to chime in?
Yeah. Among the interesting facts that I came across, we of course know of the presidents who were Masons, but also there were some people who lost their presidential races and they were brothers. So here are some examples. I found this on an article on MIT. I don't know why, but that's where it is. And among the men who lost to the presidential races, we have Thomas Dewey, Alf Landon, Hubert Humphrey, Robert Dole, George McGovern, Barry Goldwater, I don't know how to pronounce that, Estes Kefauver, George Wallace, Earl Warren, and John Sparkman. Now, Barry Goldwater, I haven't confirmed any of these. These were just listed. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. We never think about those. And these are people that, of course, went all the way to that ultimate battle. So,
yeah. And the unique one, Thomas Dewey there, that one I know of, and he was running obviously against Truman, because that's that one.
Yeah, Dewey
defeated famous Truman, right? Headline.
Yeah.
That's right. That's that famous headline. Yeah. Yep. So
he was a Mason. Dewey was a Mason?
Yes. Yep.
Oh.
Running against a Mason.
Boy, but that made it a really awkward lodge meeting after that.
Oh, bad.
Sorry, bro. How about you, Jason? Anything fun and exciting?
Nope. It's just I've been sitting back listening to Mike go on. I've learned a ton. I've got a book on Truman, and I guess one interesting anecdote is that during my background investigation and my investigation committee for Acacia Lodge, one of the brethren who interviewed me on the investigation committee was a Capitol police officer, and he talked a little bit about how when Truman went to Lodge when he was a president, he had special, Capitol Police brethren accompany him into the lodge room. And that was cool.
Awesome. Well, good stuff, gents. We're down to the last section of the show where we ask the final question. And so get your pencils out. I want you to get ready for an answer to this final question. The final question is, did you know George Washington was a Freemason? Robert, what say you?
I'm just...
It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you don't know the answer. There's no shame in
I
it.
had no idea. I had no idea. It's so crazy. It's unimaginable that next thing you're going to tell me that all of his Masonic correspondences are available on Kindle for free or something. Mind blown, dude.
No, you weren't ready for that. So what are your thoughts?
Wasn't. Honestly, I can only imagine the weight on any president, any sitting president, even the president who is president for a day. Just the sheer amount of stress and what these individuals have had gone through, in their lives, in pursuit of securing, what is like the country that other countries modeled their democracy after. It's just amazing. And I want to thank Mike for pulling this all together, because so much of this was new information for me. I've read, of course, Steve's works. I have skimmed, famous American Freemasons from time to time, mostly when I'm looking for great reference material and something entertaining to read. I just thought it was a really great presentation, put together well, and I want to thank Mike for his work tonight. So thank you, Mike.
Yay. All right. Jason Richards, did you know GW was a Freemason?
The more appropriate and more perplexing question to ask is, did you know that George Washington was an irregularly made Mason?
Boom. There it is. Yes, I did. Anything else,
Are you
Jason?
sure you want to answer that live? You might get in trouble for that answer.
I'm not running for president, so I guess I'll have to get it all out now. All right, thanks, Jason. Over to, let's see, Juan. Did you know George Washington was a Freemason?
George Washington Carver, or
Yeah, the peanut guy.
The peanut guy. Well, I had my suspicions because there have been some Masonic presentations that unveil some of that information. But the better question is, did you know that George Washington wore dentures, and that despite the common misconception, they weren't made of wood? They did have lead, springs, human teeth, cow teeth, ivory, all kinds of stuff. So you see all these very poised and very elegant portraits of George Washington, but you can't necessarily imagine how at some point in his life it was uncomfortable for him to do some of the things that we take for granted, like eating hoe cakes in the morning,
Yeah.
or or smiling. Hoe cakes. That's what them are called. Hoe cakes.
Alrighty.
This is a family show, one.
You eat what you eat. I'll eat what I eat.
But it's a fun fact that he actually really loved sweets, and hoe cakes in the morning, they had to be cut into pieces because it was very uncomfortable. But anyway, this was a fun episode. Thank you, everyone who participated, who shared their questions and comments in the YouTube channel. Mike, thank you so much for doing the research. As always, you've found some interesting gems that we would be deprived of otherwise. And brothers, if you enjoyed this show, make sure to share with them with people. And if you like upright standing men and their customs, I invite you to go over to thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com, where we discuss what it means to be a gentleman in today's society. Good evening.
All righty. And presenter extraordinaire for tonight. I'm not even going to ask you because you know George Washington was a Freemason.
Yeah, that's right. And Juan, you talked about the teeth there. It made me think there's an anecdote. I'm not sure how much truth there is to it, but one of the busts of him where he has that almost straight mouth look, when they were working on doing his mouth, Martha came in the room and did something to try and make him smile, and he half smiled there and was angry that she made him smile. And that's how his mouth ended up with that tight-lipped look that he has. And that's how come it ended up on every single one of the busts that are made of him.
Thanks, Martha.
And one other little quick anecdote about some of our presidents there. Andrew Jackson was a badass. He was a duelist. He fought hundreds of duels and apparently never lost because he was still alive. So, yeah.
Unlike Alexander Hamilton.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Fought one and lost it to Aaron Burr.
No, if at first you don't succeed, then neither dueling nor skydiving is for you.
That's right. But anyway, if you are all looking for anything to read, I have a blog out there now, and you can get to it by going to dream-walker.net. That's where if any of you have seen it, there's the one that's titled for my brother Freemasons. That's with the one we used for last week's show, but that blog is out there. Yep, that's it there. And you can actually get to it also easier by just looking for Michael John Hambrecht on Facebook. You'll find my page, and most of the blog posts are shared there as well. So,
all right. Well, thank you for your research. Thank you for your writings. This has been fantastic. So, again, a special thank you for putting that all together. The best part about the show is it's available to watch anytime. So if you need a presentation for Lodge, like hit play, and you'll hear the docile tones of Mike Hambrecht give you a nice little history of our Masonic presidents for a Lodge education program. So please go ahead and do that, because I think that's exactly what we try to do here, and really enjoyed hearing our little anecdotes there, especially the afterglow, the after conversations. So. I was really surprised to learn that George Washington was a Freemason. He's hanging in all our lodge buildings, but I was shocked to find out that the apron he wore actually meant that he was a Freemason. Now, this is really good. I learn something every time we do this, and again, more especially this time with Ronald Reagan. I'm going to give him a half credit. I'm going to give him partial credit, because it wasn't his fault, but it certainly was an interesting tale of history. So we'll give him that. So that was it. It was a really great show. I want to thank all of you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Keep searching for more light. Have a good night.